our magical thinking cannot change the universe. It's really all about trying to change something in ourselves that is waiting to be faced.
Hello and welcome to Being Yourself, Self-Inquiry with Gangaji. My name is Barbara Denham-Pont, and it is my great pleasure to welcome you to the second episode of our new podcast. This month, I was inspired by something I heard Gangaji say over 20 years ago, something that never left me. She was speaking to a man who said he felt hopelessly lost and confused and desperate. What Gangaji told him was, when you're at the end of your rope, throw the rope away. I never forgot those words because she was saying something that was so radical, so different than anything else that I'd ever heard. What she was really saying was, give up hope. Stop hoping. Now, I'd never considered that, and I'm sure you may have never considered that. But it was a powerful moment. So I went into the archives and I found this wonderful sharing that was recorded in 2011 at the Omega Institute. And in it, Gangaji shares her story of meeting hopelessness. And it's a very personal story. So I invite you to take a listen.
Hope is one of these words like God and truth and self and love that is a small word for very many different meanings. And when hope is simple, like hope you day, hope you have a good journey, hope you get well, hope I get well, it's light. It's like a blessing. And it's beautiful. But when it becomes a strategy of avoidance, it is life-choking. It actually becomes counterproductive to a blessing. It becomes a curse. So hope is very appropriate for children. You know, it's a future. I'll just tell you a brief story from my life story. When I was 5 years old, I had a very severe burn on my hand, and it required operations and then operations on top of operations, and it was painful and traumatic. But then there was this horrible scar with keloids and all kinds of things on it, deformed nails. And I would, everyone, burns are ugly. And when they heal, they're often ugly in the sense of the way we see beauty. I had this wonderful grandmother who kept telling me, when you're 11 years old, the doctor said, it'll be gone. The scar will be gone. She certainly believed that, as well as hoped that was true, because this was like a mark on this little child, you know. And so when I was 11 years old, I figured I could hold out till then. I was 5 years old, and, you know, I hid it. I got all kinds of strategies. And perhaps more importantly, it became a reflection to me of what was deeply scarred and ugly inside myself. Some accident that had happened, I didn't know what. But I started hoping. It's going to be so great. At 11 years old, it's going to be gone. By the time I was 10, and it hadn't gone any, I couldn't imagine I could just go away when I was 11. I mean, I was smart enough to know that that is actually impossible for something just to disappear overnight. But I had this magical thinking about hope. You know, if I hope it does, and they said it would, and it's supposed to, when I'm 11 years old, it's going to go away. And of course it didn't when I was 11 years old. And amazingly, even though I knew that was going to happen, I was shocked. And I felt betrayed. It didn't go away. It's with me. And I would see people flinch from it as I grew older. And, you know, in the courting stages, and men are looking to see, are you perfect? And so my teeth weren't perfect, but oh my God, what is that? And, you know, I would just hide it. Of course, this is small. I've talked to people who were born missing an arm, and she went through a much bigger version of this, but that's a small one. It is shocking to me when I look back how many decades were spent hiding and hoping that somehow this would be removed from me, and more importantly, that what it was a reflection of, this that was flawed and ugly inside me, would be removed. And so in that case, hope was really a detriment to my finally just recognizing this is the way this hand is. Now let's get on with the way life is. I wasn't thinking of it every moment, but I gave it too much thought. It became too important. And in a similar way, I had hoped that if I got enlightened, I wouldn't have any pains. There would be this sweeping clear of all my flaws. I wouldn't care how I looked. I wouldn't care what people thought of me. I would just be in bliss, and everybody would be in bliss with me, and that happily ever after. That's what hope is, a happily ever after. And it's detrimental used that way. It takes a chunk out of one's life. I also hoped that my mother would stop drinking. She didn't. I hoped that, we hope that the sun will come out, but if the sun needs to come out and we hope that it comes out and we're miserable when it doesn't come out, then hope is a detriment to just appreciating it. Our magical thinking cannot change the universe. It's really all about trying to change something in ourselves that is waiting to be faced. At a certain point in my life, I had to face my own internal sense of ugliness and flawedness and worthlessness. All of my movement, my indulgence in perfecting myself or seducing others to see that I am actually perfect, I am good, I am worthy, was just covering some sense that I knew myself to be unworthy, unlovable, scarred, ugly, marred for life, with no hope, but then the hope that you wouldn't see that. So it was a hopeless hope dichotomy then at play with itself. In the core it felt hopeless and miserable, but I couldn't go there, so I just hoped you wouldn't see it. And it's exhausting. It's work. And it doesn't work. Because what you're covering then is somehow also what you're transmitting. And it is ugly then. It becomes a part of your persona. So at some point in my life, through meditation, and actually before I met Papaji, but I can see now it was in some kind of preparation for being able to hear him, for having the space in my mind to hear him, I recognized I had to open. I had to meet this ugliness, because it would come up in meditation, it would come up in the middle of the night, come up at 4 a.m., come up when I was stressed. So by the grace of our common intelligence, I actually opened to it. It was in a meditation, and I felt it. And so it wasn't about the scar at that point, but it was about some dark, really scary, bad energy. And I felt like if I met it, this was the conversation in my head, I would go insane, or I'd be lost to it. I would just be one of these women you read about in romantic novels, that are just gone, lost. But there I was in meditation, and I was in my early 30s at that point, and so I had tried so many strategies, and this had always come back to haunt me, that somehow there was the willingness in that moment simply to open to it with no hope of it changing, with no hope that opening to it would make it go away. Just to open to it, to not do anything with it. And it was like a cloud, a very dark cloud of energy. And in the instant of opening to it, it wasn't. Less than an instant, in an immeasurable nano moment, it was not. And to me, this was magical. so I hoped it would never come back. And the truth is, it never did come back like it was, because there had been decades of compressing it into that. But it came back in other little ways. Someone was unfriendly to me, someone didn't like me, and it would trigger this old pattern. Just like my scar is still here. It's maybe not as noticeable as my skin has aged, but it didn't go away, and that internal scar, the track of it, didn't go away. But it all of a sudden shifted from being an enemy, from being something I have to hide myself from and hide from others, to a meditation, an invitation, an opportunity to actually open. I didn't choose to open every time. Somebody could not like me and I could just, oh, what did I do? I could have been better. And then all of a sudden you start to hear yourself, oh, this is so familiar. How many times have I said this? I should have been better. I should have done it right. I should have given them what they wanted. Oh, there's a lack there. There's a hole there. There's an abyss there. There is the hopelessness of ever doing it right, getting it right. There's the hopelessness of death. There's a hopelessness of imperfection, a hopelessness of what we cannot change. And in the willingness to give up the hope that you can control or fix or manage that just for a moment. Just for a moment to open to it. And you can't force that opening, because if you're forcing it, it's really you're forcing the opening so that you can get rid of that ugliness, that darkness, that cloud, that energy. So it's not like an exorcism. It's a willingness for everything to be exactly as it is, at least in this moment. It also doesn't mean that you then don't work to make things right. If there had been an operation that could have fixed this scar, I would have had it. I took magic substances to fix this internal scar, and that felt great, but they didn't last. So I'm just encouraging you to let you know that I'm really no different from you in the sense of my capabilities. I was not a great meditator. I had to set the timer for my meditation. And I would look, and shake it. Must be broken. But there was something in there that appeared in some moment in my life that I can't even really remember. Maybe it was when I fell in love with Jesus as a 6-year-old. I have no idea. But something that was a recognition that there is a huge life available. And in my infantile thinking, I hoped that I could just fix what was wrong with me, then I could get to that huge life, that life of peace and beauty and love and ease and fulfillment. So like all of us, I went down so many wrong roads. And sometimes the waves would part. And I would think, whoa, my magical thinking does work. Because sometimes the waves do part. Grace appears in beautiful ways, and intention is beautiful, and hoping is beautiful. But when it becomes a strategy of avoidance, and of avoidance of what is like got you, then it is a detriment. And my encouragement is to, for a moment, for this day we have together, tomorrow, tonight, give up hope for anything being different. Anything, externally or internally. In particular, internally, because that's where the real charge is. Just give up hope. I'm not saying dramatize giving up hope, because that's really also a kind of magical theater. So like, if I can dramatize it, it won't get any worse. Just give up hope and discover what's here. I believe that hope and faith get used in the same way, and they're actually very different. Faith comes from some deep, profound experience, and hope is some hope for experience in the future. You give up hope that anything has to change about you, any state has to not be here, then so much energy is available to actually meet what is here. And it's not about when I get something, then that will be fixed. When I get enlightened, when I get the perfect mate, when I get the perfect job, if I stop my job, if I switch mates, if the sun comes out, then it's not confused with pleasure, the pleasure of, and the necessity maybe of switching mates, changing jobs. The sun coming out is definitely a necessity, but it's not confused with the fulfillment that's always here, your open heart.
Thank you for listening to Being Yourself. We always welcome your reports and topic suggestions. You can write to me, Barb, at info@Gangaji. That's info@gangaji.org. And looking ahead, on January 19th and 20th, the California Institute of Integral Studies is hosting a weekend with Gangaji in San Francisco. The focus for the weekend is Discovering Natural Fulfillment. You can learn more about Gangaji, her complete schedule of events online and in person, and you can find out more about the work of her foundation on the website, Gangaji.org. I'm very grateful for this opportunity to bring this vast archive to you. This is Barbara Denenpont. Until next time.